Welcome to lecture 44. So from this class we will start with the network synthesis. Okay. So before going it into the synthesis part, let me tell you what we have done till now. We have done or we have discussed on the network analysis. Okay, so what basically was the network analysis? The network analysis related was the H of S, which was the ratio of Laplace transform of output to the Laplace transform of input. If it is given, then generally what we used to do it, we used to have the known thing which will be the network property, that is H of S into instead of Q, let me use it at the excitation. So suppose this is my E of S. Okay, so E of S. So from that, what generally we used to have for the network analysis, that we used to have, or it has to be given that the network property and the excitation the excitation which is to be given the network, and what we have to do basically, we have to find out the output, or we have to find out the response. Or in time domain also, generally what we used to do it, we used to find out the response or output of the circuit by the use of the convolution. And what generally we used to need for it, we need what is the excitation given to it and what is the impulse response of it. Okay, I mean, if this is the network given to us, what generally we used to give it, we used to give it the excitation to it once, and also we should know what is the impulse response, so that I can find out what is the response, maybe voltage or maybe current for the particular branch. Okay, basically this is what till now we have seen, that network was given, excitation was given, and we have to find out the different voltages and currents for different you can say that for the different branches. Okay, from now onwards what we will see in the network synthesis problem is that it is given to us what is the basically for the network synthesis, what is to be given, the synthesis generally for network synthesis problem, what is to be given, the excitation is given to you and response is known to you. Excitation and response is basically known to us, and we have to find out what is the network basically. Okay, so in this what we have to do, we have to find out what is the H of S, and where we used to know what is R of S, and we used to know what is the excitation given to. This is basically the synthesis problem. So now here our task is to synthesize the network from the given functions. Okay, so the first step behind this procedure, or if suppose someone has told you that these are the things and you synthesize the network means design a network, right? So synthesize the network, and somebody has been asked you, so if it is the case given to you, then how to start? Okay, so first question you should ask in your mind, that can I really synthesize the network? If yes, if you will get the answer yes, you can design the network, then you can synthesize the network, then okay, you can proceed for it. Okay, so generally for the synthesis problem, what is to be done, first I should ask the question to myself, that whether can I synthesize a network or not, and the answer for this should be given by some test. Okay, so there will be the realizability test, we will have to see, okay, whether network can be realized or not, or synthesized or not. So for that we have to do some test, and that is called as realizability test. Okay, and once okay, you know, okay, this test your means this test has been passed for the particular network, then okay, then you can synthesize the thing. And there are the various methods to synthesize it. Okay, so first question we should ask to ourselves, that can we synthesize a network or not? If yes, then we will proceed further. Otherwise, don't waste your time. If the test is not passing, then you just assume that this whatever the information is given to you, you cannot synthesize the network. You tell to either your manager or who has given you the problem, you cannot synthesize it. Okay, so this is one thing. And again I'll tell you, basically for the analysis there will be the unique the solution, but for synthesis there will not be unique solution. Okay, for synthesis there will be different ways by which you can synthesize it. Okay, so there is no unique solution for the synthesis, that also keep it in your mind. Okay, so there will be the realizability test, and that first will be you have to determine whatever the h of s, basically this is the network or h of s which is given to us, or say now h of s is given to you. So this we have to check it out whether can we realize as a physical passive network or not. Okay, so there are basically two important considerations for that. One is, there are two important considerations. One is your causality, and second important thing is stability. Okay, so what is causality? At the start also we have discussed. So causality is that if I have a system which is LTI, okay, to that input is say excitation, output is say this response E of t, and suppose this is my network. Okay, so the network is said to be causal one and only if and only if the present value of output is depending on the present value of input and or past value of input. Okay, so if the present value of output is depending on future value of input, then you say that okay, this system is not at all causal. Okay, so basically this is the definition of causal. If the network is said to be causal, I am repeating again, if the present value of output is depending on the present and or past value of input, then the network will be causal. Okay, so it should not depend, mind you, for the future values of input. Okay, for example, voltage cannot appear between let's say I will draw the two terminals here. This general I have drawn, let me, because if I am saying network, so these are the two terminals. So what voltage cannot appear between any pair of terminals in the network before a current is impressed, or vice versa. Okay, so or this is in terms of input and output I have defined, but let me define in terms of impulse response also. So if the impulse response, if the impulse response of your network is equal to 0 for the negative values of t, then your network is anticipatory, means the network is causal network. Okay, so for example, if I have the impulse response like this, see, this is your t and suppose this is your h of t, and I got the impulse response of the network this way. So in this case, what is happening, the impulse response is left sided. It means that your system is not causal. Okay, so this is basically the case. And if I have the impulse response like e raised to minus t into u of t, once switching has been done, and then I should get the output, meaning of it is okay. So if this e raised to minus e to u of t, then your impulse response will be like this. So this is basically the realizable kind of thing. This is your causal thing, or causal impulse response. If I have an impulse response like this, say somewhat like this, my impulse response is, so this is also not causal, this is also not realizable impulse response. But what you can do, it you can shift it by some amount. Let's say here it was minus t, so you can shift it by an amount of capital T towards right, and then you can realize it. Okay, or you can synthesize it. Okay, so by if you are if you are shifting this h of t towards right, so there is addition of phase shift, and if that phase shift is linear, okay, then you can synthesize it properly. Okay, but if let's say I have the impulse response like this, suppose this is my impulse response, okay, which is sinc function. Okay, this is basically the time domain representation of low pass filter, ideal low pass filter. So in this case, what is happening, your h of t is not equal to 0 for t is less than 0. Okay, so is not equal to 0 for t is less than 0. So at that time, your system or your impulse response, if this is the case, then your network will be infinitely the infinitely non-causal. Okay, even though if I want to make it causal, let me shift it, but how many times I should shift? Okay, so it is up to minus infinity to plus infinity, so not at all possible, right? So this is basically not a realizable kind of impulse response. Okay? So this way you can define the causality. This is basically in time domain we have defined. We can also define in frequency domain also. So in order to define the causality in frequency domain, let me define the causality This is causality in frequency domain. So for that, the criteria is to define the causality in frequency domain. This is given by Paley-Wiener criteria, P-A-Y-L-E-Y, Paley-Wiener criteria. Okay, so Paley, with the help of Paley-Wiener criteria, you can check it out whether the system is causal or not in frequency domain. Okay, so the necessary and sufficient condition for this is the necessary and sufficient condition for this is that in frequency domain, basically what we have seen till now, h of s was known to us. H of s, where is that? Okay, h of s that we have to decide in terms of causality. Okay, so that I will evaluate in terms of j omega, so which will be your h of j omega. Okay, so this h of j omega, based on it you can decide the causality according to Paley-Wiener criteria, and it says that your h of j omega will be realizable if and only if the necessary and sufficient condition is that if you integrate it of the log of magnitude of h of j omega, okay, and take it its magnitude and make it the division by 1 plus omega square with d omega. If it is less than infinity, then the h of j omega will be causal. Okay, so basically this is the condition for the h of j omega to have the realizability. And also mind you, this magnitude of h of j omega square must be completely integrable. I mean, integrable means it should be square integrable, means it should be minus infinity to plus infinity. If I'll take it the integral, it should be less than infinity. So if it is absolutely integrable, then h of j omega has to be absolutely integrable, and then you test this. Okay, and if it will pass, then you can say that okay, the thing can be realized. Okay, so what does it mean? So basically here there will be the two things, two important property we can extract from it. First is if the magnitude response, what it says that if the magnitude response of that is h of j omega, if the realizable, then it must not be 0 over a finite band of frequency. What does it mean? If I have a magnitude response h of j omega, right? So let me say I have the magnitude response like this for some band of frequencies, which is say minus omega c to plus omega c. Okay, so if the magnitude response h of j omega, or if and if the network is realizable, then it must not be 0 over finite band of frequency. It may be 0 for one of the frequency, but for band of frequency it will not be 0. So if you look this case, this is basically the ideal low pass filter. So here what I observe from omega c, omega greater than omega c to infinity, basically this is 0 over a band of frequency. Okay, so that's why it doesn't satisfy the Paley-Wiener criteria. Hence this ideal low pass filter is not at all realizable, and also because it consists of the infinite impulse response that we have seen it. Okay, so this is one condition. But if you slightly say that okay, if I'll say the RC network, so what will happen? It will be something like this, and it goes to infinity at omega tends to infinity that way. Okay, so in this case it will not be 0 for band of frequencies, and that's why it can be realizable. Right? Okay, so this is not realizable as impulse response also infinite. Okay, now second test we can say that basically why it is, because if let me tell you that also, if omega is for omega greater than omega c, your magnitude of h of j omega will be equal to 0, right? And if you take the log of magnitude of h of j omega, you will get minus infinity, and again what is given, take the magnitude of it, you will get it plus infinity, so which is not satisfied this, so this is not less than infinity, right? Okay, this is one thing. And second thing is that the magnitude response of this the realizable network, if it should not fall off to 0 faster than your exponential order. Okay, So for example, if I have a Gaussian function, so what is the Gaussian function? It's simply e raised to minus x square, and if I will write in h of j omega form in frequency domain, so it will be e raised to minus omega square. What is the magnitude of it? It will be e raised to omega square. Okay, take it the log of it, so log of magnitude of h of j omega will be equal to omega square. Okay, and then let me integrate this from minus infinity to plus infinity. Omega square 1 plus omega square d omega, this is obviously not less than infinity. Okay, hence it is not realizable. But if you say the h of j omega, which is equal to 1 upon 1 plus j omega, for example, so magnitude response will be 1 over square root of 1 plus omega square, and this is basically the response of RC network. We have seen this is if it is RC, and if you find out the VI and V naught by VI, so we will get 1 over 1 plus RC j omega, and if RC is equal to 1, I'll get it this as a magnitude response. Okay, and in this what we can say, how will it be? It will be the magnitude response is like this, and when omega tends to infinity, then only it will be 0. Okay, so it is not 0 for band of frequency, so it is quite a realizable kind of network. And also this fall is not faster than that of exponential. Okay, and this is the reason that RC, this kind of h of j omega means can be realized using RC network. Okay, this is regarding causality. This is one of the condition for the realizability. Second condition is related with the stability. So second condition is related with the stability, and what stability says that it will be, the definition of stability is the network is said to be stable if it is bounded input and bounded output kind of thing. Okay, so in terms of what, if let's say I have the network, okay, to this is my excitation. Okay, suppose E of t and R of t is my response. Fine, I can write okay, excitation response that way here and there. Fine. Now if the system is, or if the network is stable, if and only if I'll give you the, if I'll give excitation is a bounded, what should happen? Your R of t also should be bounded. Okay, but suppose if my impulse response is like this t, okay, and if I give E of t as a finite thing, but what will happen in R of t as an impulse, I will get it unbounded kind of thing. Okay, so this is not possible for the network to be realizable. Okay, so for the realization, what is to be done? If your input is bounded, output has to be bounded. Okay, or in terms of impulse response, if I would like to define it, so what is basically your impulse response has to be absolutely integrable. H of tau d tau has to be less than infinity. It's magnitude response basically. Okay, so impulse response must approach to 0 at t tends to infinity. I can say that means what? Limit t tends to infinity, your h of t approach to 0. This means that your this thing is bounded. Okay, or we know how to find out the output of the system. Output will be integral or convolution integral, let's say from 0 to infinity, then x of tau, h of t minus tau d tau. Now suppose I'm saying that your x of t is finite. Okay, so which is c1. Okay, so your y of t is also has to be less than c1. Okay, then it depends on h of t minus tau, how will it be? So if your x of t is finite, your h of t also has to be finite, less than has to be c2. Okay, it means the, if input is bounded, your output has to be bounded, and also the impulse response has to be absolutely integrable. Okay, and if I would like to define in terms of frequency domain, so for the frequency domain, basically here generally for the stability we will take in Laplace domain h of s. Okay, so for the stability, if I have h of s, all poles must have to lie on the left hand side of s plane, left hand side of s plane. And why? We already covered that, because if the pole will lie on the right hand side, so what I will get it, suppose I have s minus 1, so what will be its inverse? Its inverse will be e raised to t, and suppose I will convolve with excitation u of t, so it will be unbounded kind of thing, and at that time your network will be unstable, and hence the poles of the network system, of poles of the network must have to lie on the left hand side of S plane. This is first condition, and also because left hand side, and also it should include the j omega axis also, that is sigma and j omega. So it should include the j omega, but when it is lying, so it should be simple pole. Simple pole means it should have the conjugate pair like this, plus j omega and minus j omega, or there should be only one pole at origin. Okay, if there will be double pole, then what will happen? If there will be double pole, then system will become unstable. Why? It is because suppose I have a double poles at same, that is complex conjugate thing. So it will be what? It will be s square plus say one frequency j omega 1 here. So it will be s square plus omega 1 square and its square. Okay, so if I'll take the inverse, what will happen? It will be t times sine omega t into u of t, and it will be, this will not be bounded. This is exponentially. This is not exponential, but this will be unbounded kind of thing. Okay, and this is the reason that if the poles are lying on the left hand side of S plane, it is good. But if the poles are lying on the j omega axis, mind you, the poles has to be simple. So there should not be the multiplicity of the poles. Okay, this is basically the condition for stability. Okay. Then next, what we'll do now, suppose I have the network function h of s, which is, let me write in generalized form, a n s raised to n plus a n minus 1 s raised to n minus 1, like this, a1s plus a0. Then suppose this is bm s raised to m plus bm minus 1 s raised to m minus 1, like this, plus b1s plus b0. Okay, so this is my general network function, okay, h of s. So for here, for network synthesis problem, what is to be done? Your order of numerator, let me say the order of numerator is, this is my n of s and this is my d of s, for example. So order of numerator or degree of numerator must be or degree of numerator cannot exceed the degree of denominator by more than 1. Okay, so what I want to tell that in the synthesis problem, the difference between the order of numerator and order of denominator at most 1. Okay, so here order of numerator can't exceed the order of denominator. Say my n is this. Okay, the order of numerator cannot exceed the order of denominator, say the order of denominator is m, by more than 1. So n minus m, the difference between this has to be less than or equal to 1 for the network synthesis problem. Why? Because if n exceeded by m by more than 1, okay, so if the difference between the order of numerator and denominator is 2, then what will happen? There are the chances that there will be multiple poles lie at s is equal to infinity. Okay, what does it mean? If s is equal to infinity means, say something, I will get s square plus 2 and something s cube plus 2, like this, or whatever, and s plus 1, like this if I write. So this s is nothing but the pole at infinity, I can say. Okay, suppose this is s raised to 4, 3, this is also s raised to 3, like this. Okay, so if the order of numerator is greater than the order of denominator by 2, then what will happen? There will the other chances that there will be multiple poles at s is equal to infinity or s is equal to j omega, and with that what will happen? Again your system will become unstable. So again, for example, if I have h of s like s raised to 4 plus 3s square plus say 4s plus 2 and divided by suppose s square plus 8s square plus, let's say, 3. So in this case what is happening? There is a difference of 2. So if I'll divide numerator and denominator, I'll get something s square and some polynomial p1 of s upon q1 of s. Okay, so here what is happening? There are two poles. Okay, there are two poles at s is equal to infinity. So here s square means what is the inverse? It will become t. T means your unbounded kind of thing. Okay, so network is not stable in this case. Okay, so overall the network is said to be stable. This is second condition is only, this network is said to be stable causality we said. Now for stability, first thing is that whatever the network function I have, it should not have can't have the poles on right half plane. Okay, this is first condition. Second condition is that your h of s same, your h of s cannot have the poles, cannot have the poles, or cannot have the multiple poles on j omega axis. Okay. Cannot have multiple poles on j omega axis. Maybe poles at origin, maybe poles at infinity, etc. Okay. And also third situation is that the degree of numerator h of s, let's say n is the degree of numerator, cannot exceed the degree of denominator by more than 1. So n minus m has to be less than or equal to m 1, and n is the degree of numerator, for example, and assume m is the degree of denominator. Okay, now we have to test, right? So this is basically the necessary condition, but necessary and sufficient condition for the testing of the network function. There is the polynomial called Hurwitz polynomial. Okay. And with this polynomial we can test whether the network function is stable or not. Okay, so if the function or the network function satisfy the Hurwitz polynomial criteria, then okay, then you can say that this kind of network is stable. Okay, so basically this polynomial now is used to test the poles whether they lie on, because these are the conditions. Now I have to test it. Okay, so this can be tested using Hurwitz polynomial, and this polynomial generally used to test the poles whether they are lying on right hand side of S plane or left hand side of S plane or on j omega axis. Okay, so here in h of s we have to test the denominator. Okay, denominator polynomial, but if h of s is say either impedance, then it will be admittance, then both the thing we have to test. Okay, numerator and denominator also. Okay. So any polynomial fs or hs, let us say network function, this any polynomial fs is said to be Hurwitz if the following two conditions are satisfied. Let me write the conditions. Any f of s is said to be Hurwitz, polynomial if and only if the following two conditions are satisfied. First is your polynomial ps is real, okay, when s is real. This is first condition. Okay, a polynomial is real when s is real. Suppose my polynomial is 4js plus 8s plus 9. So in this case, this is your polynomial is not real even though s is real. Okay, so this is what the test by which you can identify. Basically, coefficient should not be imaginary. Okay, in S domain, this is first condition. So if this is the case, then this is not Hurwitz polynomial. Okay, not Hurwitz polynomial if it consists of G. Right. The next is the roots of the polynomial must have real parts, and which may be 0 or negative. Okay, so the next condition is that roots of the polynomial p of s must be or must have real parts which will be 0 or negative. Okay, so that what will happen, pole will lie on the left hand side of s plane only. Okay, so for example, if suppose I have the polynomial p of s like this, which is say an s raised to n plus an minus 1 s raised to n minus 1 plus up to plus say a1s plus a0. Okay, so here p of s is real when s is real, means first property has to satisfy when an minus 1 a1 a0 will be real. It has to be real, and its roots should be in such a way that it should be minus alpha, say this real part, and plus minus j beta. Okay, so the real part either may be 0, or if it is not 0, then it has to be negative. Okay, so then only we can say that, yeah, so the it means that polynomial is Hurwitz polynomial. Okay. So with this now, so if this is my condition, then this kind of polynomial must have three type of factors. What may be one factor? The poles may be like this, as the poles, if the poles will be real, then poles will be like this, that is s plus alpha I, where alpha I, or where roots will be minus alpha I. Okay, this should be must factor. This should be one of the factor from this P of S. Okay, because see, this is polynomial in this n raised to s n to a0, and from that I will get the roots, and that roots basically I have to check it out. So one way to get the root is simple, real root, which will be s plus alpha I, and you can see that the root is negative, which is at minus alpha I. Okay, now what is the second possibility? Second possibility may be that the real part will be 0, and you may get it the roots like this, s square plus omega I square. So here what we are observing, here, the roots will be at plus minus j omega. Okay, so roots will be at plus minus j omega. Okay, because these are the imaginary, complex imaginary waves. Okay, so one root will be at plus j omega, second root will be at minus j omega. It must have to be in conjugate pair, otherwise what will happen, the thing will be, the element will be imaginary. Okay, so you must have to get the conjugate pair of the imaginary part also. So but this has to be simple. Okay, so there should be only one kind of the imaginary root must lie on the j omega axis at plus minus omega, that's it. Okay, if there will be multiple poles on the plus minus j omega I, then what will happen, your system will be unstable. Okay, this is this so second factor may be like this. What may be third factor? Maybe complex conjugate. Okay, so it may be s plus say gamma I plus beta I. One root may be like this, and second has to be if it is the beta j, or what should I say, this is gamma I plus minus or plus j beta I, and what should be second, it should be s plus gamma I minus j beta I. So third possibility, that roots must be complex conjugate, and remember in this real part has to be negative always. It should not be s minus gamma, it should be always s plus gamma I. Okay, so real part must be negative. Fine. So ultimately whatever the polynomial will be, this polynomial must contain this three kind of roots to have the Hurwitz case. Okay, so what will be my now polynomial P of s? So this P of s I can write as s plus alpha I may be one root. What may be second root, second type of root may be s square plus omega I square. What may be third kind of root, s plus gamma I square plus beta I square, that way. Okay, so if this is the requirement of the polynomial is said to be Hurwitz, and basically what we are checking it out for the stability. Okay, so this is the requirement, and then if you solve this kind of polynomial, then what we can say that if we get this kind of roots and this kind of polynomial, whatever the resultant polynomial we will get, okay, which will be, let's say, in terms of a n s raised to n plus a n minus 1 raised to n minus 1 and all up to a1s plus a0. So whatever the polynomial we will get, from that the coefficients whatever we will get, so that coefficients always must have to be positive. Okay, so if all the coefficients of that polynomial is positive, will be positive, then what I'll get it, all the roots will be on the left hand side of S plane. Okay, so this is first also property you can say, or if all the coefficients of the polynomial are positive, so ultimately it is said that the roots must have to lie on the left hand side of S plane. Okay, okay, again next is that if I have the missing coefficients. Okay, so suppose I have the coefficients an to a0. Okay, and in that some of the coefficients are missing between highest power of s to lower power of coefficient, then indicate that the coefficients will be negative. Okay, and these roots will definitely lie on the right hand side of S plane. Okay, so again the polynomial is said to be Hurwitz. There should not be coefficient missing, so no coefficient between an to a0, missing. Okay, For example, if let's say I'll write the polynomial, one of the polynomial like this, p of s, which is say s raised to 8 plus s raised to 7 plus 2s raised to 6 plus 4s raised to 4 plus 2s raised to 2 plus say 33s plus 8. Okay, so here if you say the polynomial, all the coefficients are positive. Okay, but again what I am seeing is that there one term is missing, that is s raised to 3. Okay, so if again one term is missing from that, then also we can indicate that there is definitely one root will lie on the right hand side of s plane. Okay, so this is also not correct. Again one more term is missing, s raised to 5 also. Okay, so this is not Hurwitz kind of polynomial. Okay, but here exception is that if the polynomial is even or purely odd, then it is okay. Okay, so no missing term or no missing coefficient should be there for the Hurwitz polynomial, except either even or purely odd polynomial. Okay, so this should be the next property. Okay, this is basically first property, you can say. What is that? If the coefficient should not miss, and if any of the coefficient is missing, then this should not be the Hurwitz polynomial, except the polynomial is either purely even or purely odd. Okay, the next property, you can say second property, both even and odd parts of Hurwitz polynomial must have roots on j omega axis only. So assume my polynomial is p of s, so which I can separate as a even polynomial and odd polynomial. Okay, so okay, so suppose m of s will be the even part of s, even part of p of s, and n of s will be odd part of p of s. Okay, so in this case there must have to be the roots on j omega axis only. This is second property. And third property says that if p of s is either even or odd, then root must lie on the j omega axis only. That is as good as same property here. Okay, so p of s is either even or odd, then root must lie on the, if the things are even or odd, then root must lie on j omega axis only. Okay, fourth property, you can say that if the I am taking the continued fraction expansion. Okay, so this term continue fraction expansion, if I'll take, okay, and in order to do the continued fraction expansion, I should have the numerator polynomial and denominator polynomial. But here what we are taking only one polynomial. So what is to be done? You divide one polynomial into even part of s and odd part of s. Okay, and then divide either even by odd or odd by even. Okay, depending on the order. And if that polynomial is said to be Hurwitz polynomial, then whatever the continued fraction expansion you will do, and with this you will get it some quotients. And if that it is said to be Hurwitz polynomial, then all the quotient of the continued fraction expansion has to be positive. Okay, what in short, if I'll take the continued fraction expansion of even by odd or odd by even of the polynomial p of s, and if I'll get it the positive quotients, then that polynomial is also Hurwitz polynomial. This is also one of the property. Okay, and what is continued fraction expansion? Basically, let me do it and let me show to you what is that. So basically, suppose I have a polynomial like this, p of s, which is s raised to, simple polynomial, I'll take s raised to 4 plus s cube plus 5s square plus 3s plus 4. Okay, then what I'll separate the even polynomial, which is m of s is s raised to 4 plus 5s square plus 4, and odd polynomial n of s, which will be say s cube plus 3s. Now I will divide m of s by n of s, because m of s power is higher than that of n of s and degree is also only 1. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll divide it. So this will be s cube plus s divided by s raised to 4 plus 5s square plus 4 divided by s cube plus s. So what is that? You will get it as coefficient. So this will be s raised to 4 plus s square, correct? S square plus 3 as it is, no? Yeah, let me write s square plus 3s. Okay, so it will be 3s square. Okay, then this will vanish. So now remaining will be 2s square plus 4. So whatever the remainder it has come, now that previously whatever the divisor was there, now it will be reverse way. So remainder will divide to the divisor here. So s cube plus 3s, and then what resultant I'll get it, 2. So here 1 by 2 s. Okay, so now it will be minus, sorry, this is s cube plus 1 by 2 into 4. So how much it will be? 2s. Okay, so this is vanished. How much remains now? S. Now this is remainder. Now again you invert it. So now what is the dividend? 2s square plus 4, and divisor will be s. Now again this will be simply 2s, so it will be 2s square. Okay, next, and then this will be cancelled, only remains now remainder again. Now this remainder will become divisor and dividend will be s, so it will be 1 by 4, sorry, this will be s by 4. Okay, and this will be s by 4, means this is s, fine, and this will be 0. Okay. So now this is my continued fraction expansion, and you observe that all the quotients, this is one quotient, second quotient, third, and this is fourth, all are positive. So if all are all positive quotient, then okay, then this is also one of the tests that the roots will lie on the left hand side of S plane. Okay, so basically what we have done here, that I divided m of s by n of s. Okay, even by odd. So what I got it one quotient which is q1, and this is also the function of s. Okay, so I will not write over q1 of s. Okay, so I'll get it quotient plus what, I'll get it remainder r1 of s upon n of s. Okay, this was my divisor. Now basically what I have to do, now I have to make it invert of it. Okay, so what I have to do it now, I will take it the dividend as n of s, and divisor will be r1 of s. Okay, so here what was the case, s plus, it was basically remainder was 2s square plus 4 divided by s cube plus 3s. So here I cannot do the continued fraction expansion. Okay, so what I have to do, I have to invert it. Okay, because the degree of numerator is less, so for continued fraction expansion what should be case, I should have the degree of numerator must be 1, then greater 1 than the degree of denominator. Okay, so now what to do, I will invert it. So how to invert it, 1 divided by, like this. Okay, so which will be now, it will become s which will be 2s square plus 4 divided by s cube plus 3s. Okay, now you divide it and check it out that way. Okay, no, this is not the case. Here what will be, it will become s cube by 3s over 2s square plus 4. Okay, and then what we have done here, then from that we obtained the quotient. What was that quotient? 1 by 2s. So this was 1 by 2s. Again one remainder I have got it, so that also I have to revert it. What was the remainder now? It was s. Okay, plus no, plus the 1 by 2, remainder was this, quotient was no quotient was this, remainder was this, divisor was 2s square plus 4. Again what we did, we have done that s plus or invert it. Again we will invert it. So if we'll invert it, will become 2s square plus 4 upon s. Okay, so from that again it will be, quotient will be 1 over 2s, then again you are doing inversion. So likewise you do till you will get it 0. Okay, so basically what we are doing it, whatever the polynomial m of s upon n of s I have, I will get first quotient q1 of s, then what I'll get remainder r1 of s, and what was your n of s will be as it is. Then you invert this to get the continued fraction expansion. So q1 of s, and it will become 1 over n of s into r1 of s. Then what happened with this, you will get it one more quotient here, which I can call it as q2, plus next remainder you will get r2 of s, which is upon r1 of s. Again to do the continued fraction expansion, what is to be done, 1 over q2 plus invert it. So this will be now r1 of s over r2 of s. So with this again you will get one more quotient q2 plus you will get it q3, plus now remainder is third polynomial, and now second polynomial divisor as it is, Again you invert it, so it will be q1 plus 1 over q2, this is q2, okay, plus 1 by q3 it was, plus again you invert it, so it will be 1 by q4, okay, plus like 1 by q5. This way you will get all the questions and you check it out if they are positive or negative. Okay, so basically this is called as the continued fraction expansion, okay, till you will get the 0. Fine. And if you observe that q1 q3 q1 q2 q3 q4 all are positive, then the polynomial is Hurwitz. Okay, right. So here the problem which we have taken was the same, that was s raised to 4 plus 5s square plus 4, which was s raised to 4 5s square plus 4 divided by, we have divided by s cube plus 3s, just now what we had taken. So we got it s, then it was s raised to 4 plus 3s square, then what we did, it was like 2s square plus 4, then we have inverted, so it will become s cube plus 3s, okay, then again you divide it, so it will be 1 by 2s, so it is now s cube plus 2s, now again quotient remains, so it will be now s. Now you invert it, this remainder will become divisor, and this whatever the divisor it had, that will become dividend. Then you divide it one more time, so 2s, so it will be 2s square, okay, this will be vanished, so remainder again invert it, so now remainder will be divisor, and whatever the previous divisor, it will become dividend. Now it will become s by 4, so now it is s, and then it is stop, we stop here. So for what will be the continued fraction expansion for this, how can I write in term of this way? So which will be q1 is s plus 1 over next quotient is 1 by 2s plus 1 over next quotient is 2s plus 1 over next quotient is s by 4. Okay, that's it. So you can say that all the coefficients are positive, so this is basically the Hurwitz polynomial. Okay, fine. Now again second example, let me take. So second example, if it is fs will be equal to s cube plus say 2s square plus 3s plus 6, so again separate real and even and odd. So m of s is 2s square plus 6, n of s is s cube plus 3s. So now I will divide s cube plus 3s as a dividend, and divisor is 2s square plus 6, so now it is n by m. Okay, and this will be what, simply s by 2, so if it is s by 2, then it will become s cube plus it is 3s, right? So this is 0. So what we observe here, that the division has been terminated abruptly by a common factor s cube plus 3s. Okay, so this polynomial also can be written as s cube plus 3s, and the remainder is 1 plus this inverse of s, which will be 1 plus 2 of s. So if you multiply, you will get it the same thing. Okay, so this is Hurwitz polynomial s cube plus 3s. Okay, this is also the Hurwitz polynomial. So if multiply HP and HP, we will get it Hurwitz. F of s will be also Hurwitz polynomial. Okay. Okay. So with this we stop here. We'll continue this in the next class. Thank you.